Hey, financial advisors, thank you so much for joining us. I am Claire Akin with Indigo Marketing Agency, and today I am thrilled to have Apollo Lupescu join us. He is with Dimensional Fund Advisors. I know a lot of you use Dimensional Advisors, and a lot of you are familiar with them. He is a really esteemed guest and an expert in this topic, and so I'm thrilled to welcome him to our webinar. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Claire. It's so good to be here. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks to everyone for taking the time to watch this.
Great. Yeah. And today we're going to talk about something that I think is really important that advisors may not think about all the time. And I think it's important to review this maybe once a year and update your marketing value proposition. So today we're going to talk about how to create a provocative value proposition. And we'll talk about what that means, why you need it, and we'll dive deep on this subject. So I'm going to switch over and share my screen so we can see the slides. All right, so just to give you a little bit of background about me, most of you know I'm a former investment advisor. I used to be with LPL Financial. I really grew up in this industry because my dad's an advisor and one of his brothers was also an advisor. And so I grew up in this industry. I'm passionate about helping advisors to serve more of their clients. And I have a master's degree in marketing, and I work with UCLA Extension as part of their CFP program. So let's turn it over to Apollo. Why don't you do a quick introduction of yourself?
My name is Apollo Lupescu. I've been working with Dimensional for about 17 years, in this company, I started as working with advisors and particularly folks in the Northeast, and it was Boston, New York, Connecticut, and just managing the relationships, understanding the advisory business, and help those advisors grow. And then eventually I transitioned into an analytical role where I oversaw the client services group, and then I oversaw the advisor 401k efforts of the firm. And for the past 10 years or so, I have been engaged in really client events, which is speaking directly to end investors. As you know, Dimensional does not allow individual investors to buy directly into the mutual funds. There always has to be an advisor or consultant in the middle. And quite often advisors are asking us, hey, could you please come and present to our clients, whether to give them some peace of mind around what's going on in the world, or to explain exactly the strategy. Before Dimensional, I went to school at Michigan State for my undergrad, and then I followed with a PhD from UC Santa Barbara. So that's, in a nutshell, who I am.
That's great. Yeah. And so we're so happy to have you here as an expert. And I work with a lot of advisors who use Dimensional Fund Advisors. And I think as we were talking before the program, the evolution of what an advisor does has really changed over the past 30, 40 years. Just since watching my dad's career, I will tell you that, he used to be a broker and he used to focus on investments. And then he got into, being an investment advisor representative and managing more things. And now you're really seeing financial planners where investments is a small segment of what they do. They're also doing, life insurance, long-term care, retirement planning, all of these other things, especially if you serve specialty groups like business owners or doctors or dentists. There's so much more that advisors are doing than just investment management. And so that's why I think it's really important to partner with a firm like Dimensional to do the investment management portions right, and also to get access to this extra support where they help you get in front of your clients with the messaging, videos, marketing, and things like that. So a lot of the advisors that Indigo works with use Dimensional's videos and marketing pieces with their clients as just another resource to take care of their clients in a better way. So today we're going to talk about how advisors can explain what they do. And there's sort of three areas that you're going to want to do this. And so we talk about, first of all, the messaging on your website. And that's something that Indigo really helps advisors with, is their digital marketing, but also this concept of an elevator pitch. And so if you're at a party or if you meet somebody socially and they say, what do? You want to give them a compelling answer that instead of making them walk away, it actually makes them want to ask you more questions. And then we'll also talk about when it gets into sort of the sales process, how can you have a more in-depth discussion about what you do and how you charge and how you get paid and the value of working with you. So we're going to go through all of those points today. So first off, Apollo, why don't you walk us through why advisors really need a clear differentiator today?
Yeah, and by the way, I really like the way it differentiated, because the value proposition, and this is part of the why, it has to be consistent across the website, across the way you speak about what you do. So there has to be a level of consistency. So to begin is why, is because you, as an advisor, you're trying to create a brand, and to create that brand, there has to be consistency. So whatever is on the website, people have to hear sort of the same words coming from you, so it's absolutely crucial to think about this very carefully, and see what is it that we offer and how do we position it, and that consistency has to be not only at the advisor level but the staff level. Everybody in the firm has to be on the same page in terms of what we do. So unless you have that, it's going to be confusing and it's going to be inconsistent, both between the different mediums that, as Claire pointed out, but also within the firm. So I think the very first reason is that you have to have that consistency, and also I think that if you have to understand the why, it is also because you want folks within the firm who might be younger advisors to really buy into this idea of what we offer in the value proposition. And if that is not clearly articulated, it's going to make them a little bit shakier in the way they talk about it. And lastly, Claire, this is one of the questions that it will come along. It's implicit or sometimes explicit around the value proposition, and what do you do, or why should I pay you? And if you know this question is coming and it's such an important question, well, why not prepare? Like the Boy Scouts, be prepared. Because if you know the question on a test, well, most people would say, well, I should probably be prepared, not go in blindly and fumble it. So I think that there are all good reasons that somebody should put a lot of thought into this, and see how they can differentiate themselves and make sure the clients understand what they do, and what sets them apart from everybody else.
Yep. And so let's just go through a couple of examples. I always think it's fun to give advisors real life examples. And these are advisors that we work with. When they came to us, they didn't have a clear value proposition. And so I just want to give a few examples of weak value propositions. So one of them is because money doesn't come with instructions. So you're not talking about what you do. You're not talking about who you serve. You're not talking about how you help. It's just kind of this nebulous concept. Another is putting our clients first. I see this on almost every advisor's site that we go to work with. It always says putting our clients first. What kind of advisor would not put their clients first? And it just doesn't set you apart from the pack. And then another is holistic financial planning. And most of the advisors that we work with are doing financial planning at this sort of holistic level. So that really doesn't set you apart. I think that, life is complex these days, and we all want to work with a specialist, whether it is, a life-threatening medical condition or something as important as that is our money. We want to work with a specialist who can help us solve our unique problem. So representing yourself with all of the words that other advisors are using is not going to set you apart and not going to make you appear to be a specialist that can help your clients reach their goals. So now let's take a look at just a few strong value propositions. And these are ones that I've worked with advisors on. So helping Canadian women business owners retire early. That is very clear cut. If you fall into that group of, wow, this person's going to understand me and they're going to allow me to reach this goal of retiring early as a business owner. Another is cashing out of your business without giving up majority control. And so a lot of business owners want to take some chips off the table. They want to sell their firm, but they don't want to give up control, especially when they're passing it to their heirs. And so this advisor helps them with that. And then a third example is creating a plan for your divorce settlement to last a lifetime. Now, if you're going through a divorce, especially as a woman, maybe you haven't worked throughout your career, maybe you gave up your career, this is an advisor that you would be uniquely drawn to ask more questions, to learn more about how they can help you achieve this goal of not worrying about money after your divorce throughout the rest of your life. So these are some really strong value propositions that advisors out there are using today. And so we want to help you come up with your own unique value proposition. So let's just talk about this idea. So when I titled this presentation, I titled it, "What is a provocative value proposition?" What we mean by that is interesting, edgy, memorable, and something that piques their interest. And so Apollo can talk more about this of, typically if people meet a financial advisor, they don't want to tell you more. They don't want to talk to you. They're going back to the bar to get another drink. And so we want to create a value proposition that gets them to be interested and to ask more questions. And so I'll let you elaborate.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important it's such an important point because we have to be ready for this. And looking at the ones that Claire you put out as not being necessarily the most impactful, what struck me is that they're very bland, and then they're not really engaging. There's no place to go from there. And one of the points you made earlier, which I think is so important, is that when you think about what to create, I think that the ultimate goal is to create engagement with the person that you're talking to. And engagement to me means will they ask another question to the exactly what Claire pointed out, and in order to do that, you also have to customize the message to the audience, but also to the situation. It's very different that if you are at as you said, a cocktail party. Assuming one of these days we're actually going back to cocktail parties, but when that happens, and somebody asks you, well, I don't think they want something very serious. So they want something to know you a little bit as a person, but the engagement might need to have a little bit of humor. And so think about, what can I say that's kind of humorous that would get somebody to ask another question? And you don't have to be a stand-up comedian, but just say something that that somebody that would make you want to ask another question. I heard somebody say, "What do you do?" And he said, "Well, I sell money." And then, "What do you mean you sell money?" And that led to an engagement. And that's kind of what I'm talking. If you can get somebody to ask one or two more questions, I think it's hugely important. The other thing that I found interesting is that whenever you do this, the elevator pitch, and this is part of the mistakes that I think people make. Should he get into that? I don't know. I don't want to make it negative, but I've seen some things that don't work very well. Is that a good venue, Claire, or should I leave it for the other negative?
Perfect. And that leads us into our next slide, which is, so I know you have a lot of experience in dealing with this topic and helping advisors to develop their value propositions. And so you probably see a lot of the times when it goes wrong. Walk us through some of the biggest mistakes that advisors make when they're articulating their value.
So that's a really great point. So what are the biggest mistakes that I think advisors are making? Well, the first mistake that I would say, and I don't say mistakes, they all kind of come with times, or they're sometimes you do them better and sometimes not as good, is really trying to memorize a little paragraph and then just recite it. And that is probably one of the worst things that I've seen people do, because people smell this. When you say something that you just memorize and repeat, they just get the sense that you're not really into it. And so you have to pay attention not only to what you say, but how you say it. I think this is one of the biggest mistakes. And I've seen it done even in role plays when I did role play with advisory firms. And they were so enthusiastic when it came to the investment approach and what they did and how they help people. But when it got to the value proposition and fees, all of a sudden, it was just a different tone of voice. It was more sheepish, and the delivery wasn't quite the same. And so the first thing that I would say is that when you think about the message that you want to send out, think about not just what you say, but how you say it. Make sure that it has conviction, it has passion. One of my favorite is one of our colleagues, Akin, were at the airport once, and somebody was making small chat and asked, "Well, what do you do?" And she just blurted out, I work for the best mutual fund company in the world. But she said it was such enthusiasm. I mean, it was very spontaneous, and that's how she felt, that it was immediate that the person said, "Wow, what do you mean? You don't normally hear that." So it kind of have led to engagement. But if she had said, yeah, I work for the best mutual fund company in the world, it would have been a very different thing. So pay attention to not just your content, but also your delivery. The second big mistake is that in the value proposition, that's quite often advisors make it about themselves rather than about the audience, rather than about the client. If you go through a lot of advisory firms, as they think about what they do and how they work with clients, it's about, we have CPAs and MBAs and PhDs and CFA and CFPs, and we do this and we do that. And there's a lot of we. And I found that very successful firms kind of avoid that mistake by making it about the client. You've worked really hard. You're a doctor, and now you're successful. The question is, how do you take the wealth that you've built and make sure that it lasts for the rest of your life? And you pass on not just assets, but also family values to your kids. All of a sudden, it's a different conversation. It's no longer about us, but it's about them. And I think quite often I found that advisors make it about them rather than about the client. So think about that client. And the third mistake, which kind of ties into this, is that whenever advisors talk about this value proposition, quite often they start kind of dumping a lot of information onto a client, and that might or might not always be relevant to that client. And I think part of the mistake is just start launching into an answer without asking some questions, probing questions. I don't like the word probing questions, but this idea of just trying to ask questions that would give you a better sense of why is that person there. Clayton Christensen was a Harvard MBA professor. He died not too long ago, and he had some very interesting theories that when all of us go and buy goods and services, we have to realize that there is a job that those goods and services do for us. So in that respect, the question for us is, what job causes a family to hire the services of an advisor? And over the years, what I found is that it's not a single job, but rather I can kind of think of 4 different categories, 4 different buckets. And the first one is that most people are not experts, and I need your help. And I don't really know what I'm doing. Please help me out with this, because this is not my expertise. That's one of them. The other one is that, I might know what I'm doing, but I'm not really good at handling my own money. I need somebody to help me in check because I do make mistakes. And the third one is that I could do it perhaps myself, but I don't want to spend time on this. I want to delegate. I want you to do it for me, and you take care of this, so I can focus on other things. And the last one, which I think is extremely powerful, and it is something that resonated with me even as I work in this space, is the fact that it's not always about the one person in the family handling money, but the entire unit. We don't live in an individual society; it's a family society, and because of that, quite often you see there's one person dealing with money, everybody else is on the outside, and I think in that respect, it's quite different if you think it that way. So that's bringing everybody in. I think it's a great value that you bring. But the reason I brought this up is that by asking some relevant questions and engaging the client and hearing them out, you get a sense of why are they there? What is it that they're looking from for you? And it might not always be the same. I've met enough people who are very successful, and to them, they just wanted to delegate and they wanted to have the spouse involved. And that was the main reason. Others, I just don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to generate income from my assets. Others basically made big mistakes with their money in the past, and I don't want that burden of dealing with my own money. So I think that the big mistake is not asking questions, not understanding why that person is there, because then you can be a lot more focused on the value proposition that is meaningful to them. If you're going to talk about, this idea that, help you keep it in check and not make mistakes with your money, if somebody's very level-headed, they'll be like, yeah, I'm not sure that's a big value add to me. But if you start talking about how that you bring the kids and you get the kids to understand money, that might pique their interest a lot more. So it really depends, and you need to hone in a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's all great advice. And I love the framework of how you think about those things. And so, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was that we did a little bit of a study on what advisors think clients care about versus what clients actually care about. And we did this two ways. So, the first thing we did was we looked at the websites of top financial advisors and we looked at the words that their websites contain. We created a word cloud and analyzed the words on those pages. So, one of the things that advisors think clients care about is you'll see all these words: portfolios, investing, discipline, financial management, portfolio. So all of these kind of concepts that advisors care a lot about, right? But when we ask clients what they care about, we interview the clients of advisors and we read the reviews that clients themselves write about working with advisors, none of the same words come into play. And so when we look at what clients really care about, here's what they tell us they care about trust, about honesty, about relationships, about responsiveness. So that's kind of a customer service issue, transparency, knowledge, education, experience. And so this ties directly into your framework of how you think about what people are hiring an advisor to do for them. And maybe, not every client is the same, but clients certainly care more about the human side of the interaction. And they do care about education, experience, credentials, knowledge, but they also care about customer service. They care about the relationship as well as the kind of the transaction. So they want it to be responsive. They want it to save them time, to take things off their plate, to organize for them. And so I think these are some of the concepts that advisors often miss when they're talking about what they do. They talk about the investment results and what they care about when they're really missing the point of what do the clients care about and why are clients trying to hire an advisor in the first place.
Yep. Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
I'd love it to just get your opinion, your insights on, what are the top 5 things maybe of what do clients really care about when they're choosing an advisor, and why would clients work with, one advisor instead of the other one down the street?
Yeah. And over the years, there has been an evolution in the business of financial advice, and what's interesting to me is that most I don't believe that most individuals out there can really distinguish the nuances of how is one advisor is different than others, and I think it's really important to actually start a conversation with just a very, very quick explanation of the different types of advisors, because different people might have different needs, and if they don't understand the different types of advisors, then it might be harder for them to see how are you different than somebody else. And the quick way that I typically organize in my head the different types of advisors is really starting with kind of what you said, Claire, that your dad started in the industry as a broker, and a broker was a phenomenal service at the time, because it provided facilitated access to the markets, and their main value proposition was investment selection. What stock should I buy? What bonds should I buy? What mutual fund should I buy? And a great deal of the value proposition of the broker was around product and what to sell. And along the way, especially as the academic work came along, and there was a realization that it's not just about the product and the investment selection, but there's also this idea of an asset allocation and how much allocate between the different asset classes. How do you create a portfolio? That was the day. Those are the days of the investment manager. To your point, that your dad evolved into that, and then what now has emerged as maybe the robo advisor, and that was a day 2 in the advisory business, and a day 3 was again the realization that it is about investment selection. You need to know what to invest and how to allocate, but there also has to be more of a lifetime of financial management or anything of that sort, where it's more than just the asset allocation, and it's more than just the product. And those are the days of the wealth manager. And that to me is a day 3. And the reason I brought this up is because if you are a client, you have to figure out exactly what am I looking for? What do I need? And if somebody's simply looking for a product, well, the broker could be, a very good solution for them because that's all they need. And you also have to be careful here that sometimes the way that brokers get compensated might be more of a suitability standard rather than a fiduciary standard. It tends to be a lot more often than the fiduciary standard is applying to the investment managers and particularly the wealth managers, which are agnostic around product. But to me, it really starts here is highlighting to somebody the different types of advisors, and part of the reason is that it's not necessarily the fees are compressing; it's the value. So what people are looking for is what do I get for what I pay? And in that respect, it's understandable. If you do more, it's okay to get paid more. As a wealth manager, you do more than a robo-advisor. Yeah, it has to be a difference, and everybody typically understands this. And the way to also think about this is how would you kind of engage a client in that conversation? Well, you could simply kind of say there's a broad number of brokers out there, and their value proposition is around product. And if you're looking for that, there are tons of them out there. For another group of people, they're looking for investment management. They want a little bit more than just product, and then certainly that's another group. But then you also have a number of families who their circumstances, their needs are actually a little bit deeper, and that's where the wealth manager comes. And what I believe is important is to not to shove people in the corner, but just ask them. It would be really useful for me to understand, what are you looking for? And I would say that most people are going to say, I'm not sure that at this day and age, I'm looking for a broker. Some people who are in the early stages of their life, they might just say, all I need is an investment manager or a robo-advisor for that matter. And if that's the case, that's a good one. But I would say that most people right now would say that the wealth management is probably the place where they would like to be, just because they have situations, there are a little more comprehensive, and they want the full package. I mean, if you go buy a car, very few people go buy the baseline model. Most of them just want to have something around it, and they're okay paying for it. I know from experience. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that brings up, I think your point is so good about, you can't just judge something on what the price is. I recently was working with my dad to put one of his clients into assisted living because she can no longer live on her own. And so I called up an expert and I said, we want the best assisted living facility. And he said, well, you have to understand the levels of care, and you have to understand this framework of what's available. In California, we have rehab facilities, we have assisted living, we have board and care. So you have to think through these ideas of, do you want somebody to be painting her toenails? Do you want somebody to go to the doctor with her? Do you want somebody to, maybe you want a doctor to come to her? So there's all these different frameworks that you really have to understand before you can make an educated buying decision or even evaluate how much you should be paying for these services. And so I think it's really important with clients to really lay out the framework of what's available in our industry and ask them, what level of care are they looking for with their money? And so I think that's a really good point that you made before you start talking about how much you get paid, to talk about the level of care that you're offering. And so let's kind of walk through to, I'll just give you an opportunity to give kind of your final advice for advisors for thinking about creating a provocative value proposition for their own firm. Any kind of final thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, I think that it ties into the earlier comment that Claire and I made, which is that you have to decide what type of firm you are, and the value proposition has to be tied into what you are offering. If you're a broker, your value proposition is going to be different than a robo-advisor and different than a wealth manager. So first of all, decide what type of firm are you? What is it that you provide to your clients? And perhaps, should you move from one bucket to another? But I'm going to probably touch on the broadest one, which is the wealth manager piece. And if you are providing wealth management, again, tying into what we talked about, what people are looking for, the job for which you get hired, what we found is interesting is to create a system that organizes all the activities around these four areas, and maybe try to find a word that starts with the same letter, in this case C, that defines the category of activities that advisors do. So we call this the four C's because there are four different categories built on the needs of the clients. And I'm going to sketch it out. It really starts with just the first C, which I think is cornerstone to what advisors bring to the table. And the first C stands for competence. That what advisors bring to the table is a set of professional expertise, experience, credentials in areas such as financial planning. It could be in investment selection, but also investment monitoring. Could be in asset allocation and rebalancing. Could be in risk management, which includes long-term care. Could be around taxes or estate planning, or how do you generate income in retirement. All of these are areas of expertise. And again, there'd be more niche if your firm does something else. But this competence, I think, is absolutely cornerstone to what advisors bring to the table. After competence, the second C stands for coaching. Most successful people, from athletes to CEO, they have a coach. An advisor as a coach really has a fundamental role to educate people, because education really prevents the uncertainty and the paralysis that comes from not knowing how things work. It's also about managing the stress that is involved in investing, and also the emotions. There's quite often strong emotions, fear, greed, and being able to negotiate those and not make decisions that are counterproductive. It could be sticking to the plan. Make sure that we created a plan, we're going to be able to stick with it, and also spending and savings. And not just, hey, you got to save more and spend less. Claire, it could be the other way around. Go get yourself that latte. You're going to be okay. You have plenty of money. But also a trusted second opinion. Is this smart of me to do this with my money or not? So there's competence, coaching. The third C stands for convenience. And you talked about this, Claire, that people want to delegate. And not only that they delegate, but and that feels good, but it's also you earn some time savings. Time that would have been devoted to this, it's no longer needed for that. You also pointed out great personalized service, that people know that they're not being passed around to call centers. Somebody's very responsive and know who they are. It could be coordinated with trusted professionals, whether they're CPAs, estate attorneys. Could be holistic financial view, all the pieces of the financial life in one place, or vendor management. What's the right custodian? What's the right platform to use technology-wise? So there's competence, coaching, convenience. The last C, it was extremely important to me, a lot of my friends, and it stands for continuity. That is not just about the person handling the money, but there's spouse involvement. And the worst time that somebody can get involved is, let's say, knock on wood, there is some tragedy happening in the family, and that's the spouse. That's when the spouse has to figure out what the money is, who to trust. It's a terrible thing. But it's also about creating joint financial goals. It's not just about one person's view of what's important about money. As we talked about, it's about kids literacy, in some cases, multi-generational planning. Could be a philanthropy or creating a legacy. So to me, all of these are really things that advisors bring to the table, wealth manager brings to the table, and together they kind of form the value proposition. And a robo-advisor might do these two things, and that's worth 50 basis points. But really, I don't believe that advisors sell per se a financial plan or an investment. I think really good advisors, what they actually sell and what clients want to buy is peace of mind. I have a relationship with an advisor. They know what they're doing, and I'm going to be okay with my money for the rest of my life. So to me, that peace of mind is ultimately what I think clients want to buy, and advisors, a good advisor, are providing. And this is one way to illustrate and think about all the facets. But also in this framework, I think it allows you to focus more on the areas that are important to that particular prospect or client. I have friends I've referred to advisors, and some of them they just don't know. It's just like, no, you do it for me. I have no idea. Others kind of know it, but the continuity piece was huge. So it's all over the place. And but ultimately, again, I think that everybody does want to get some peace of mind that they're going to be okay with their money for the rest of their lives. And Claire, I kind of did this sketch. I like sketching. I think it's good to sketch, but I also realize that it's not always easy to decipher this. So one of my colleagues, Lee, actually does have a slide of these 4 elements, so it's easier to read. So that's something that we can talk a little bit when towards the end of the webinar.
Absolutely. And thank you for putting together the 4 C's. When I first saw your 4C presentation, I knew that I had to have you on our program just to explain this to advisors, because I think it's such a powerful way to think about what they do and what they're offering. And it's something that I hadn't seen before. So I hope it's really helpful for the advisors watching. If you do want to download the 4 C's framework, you can click the link below and download that and get in touch with Lee. And so Dimensional Fund Advisors offers so many resources for advisors, everything from town halls to events by Apollo, virtual events, topical presentations. You know, if the market takes a dip and you want to get in front of your clients with a guest expert, they are there to help you support your clients in doing that and to help offer education. And so I love the work that you guys are doing with advisors and their clients. And I think you guys are a phenomenal resource. I really encourage advisors out there. You know, we just talked about all of the things that you do to offer your clients support. I really advise to outsource certain things to a professional, just like you're asking your clients to outsource their financial planning to a professional. Think about outsourcing your marketing to a professional and some of your client support and client education to professionals. It gives you more depth and more specialization by having this team of experts working underneath your firm and behind the scenes of your firm. And it gives you more time to do what you do best. And so I think Dimensional is an amazing opportunity to work with some professionals that really know what they're doing. So this is your contact information here to get in touch with Dimensional. And I also want to end by challenging advisors listening to do the Provocative Value Proposition Challenge. What I'm asking you to do is write down 10 ideas of potential value propositions for your firm. Send them to my team. So you can email me, Claire@indigomarketingagency.com, and we will go through each of your ideas and provide feedback and constructive criticism to improve them, so you can with a value proposition that really works for your firm and really helps you and your team and even your clients think about and articulate what you guys do best in a new way that makes it easy to explain who you serve and how you help. So Apollo, I know that you and I have some advisor clients in common, but why don't you walk us through who is the best fit client for Dimensional and who do you guys typically work with?
That's a very interesting question, Claire, because when I started about 17 years ago, it was a very different client base. We were a relatively small group working with advisors. And over the years, I think there was this idea that you need to drink the Kool-Aid and you have to be a zealot to work with Dimensional. And that's not the case. I mean, that was, way back in the day, we're way understaffed. But right now, we do have a lot of folks actually working with advisors. And in fact, the same way that we talked about the evolution of advisors, there has been an evolution at Dimensional, because back in those days, we just had great investment solutions. But over the years, we kind of migrated to offer a broad set of services to advisors. It's not just the investments, whether they're the mutual funds or the ETFs, but really it's about the practice management support and helping advisors with their business side, and also the communication and messaging, because it's so important. That's basically what people are saying. So, not not what Claire does, but in terms of like the more mundane, if there's an issue out there, how do we discuss it with a client? And that's something that we heard loud and clear from the advisor community, that they would really appreciate some support. So it's if you're curious, we do have one individual, Lee Jadalkin, is a good friend of mine, and he is actually working with new advisor relationships. So I think that if you are interested, certainly Lee is happy to talk to anybody.
Yeah, and just as you talked about, how successful CEOs and business people need a coach, advisors need some coaching too, especially when it comes to practice management, how to educate their clients, how to manage the problems that come up. And so many advisors out there are working on an island or in a silo. And so partnering with a firm like Dimensional that can offer you support, bounce ideas, help your strategy is really valuable to further your career and help you to be more successful over the course of your career.
And even learning what are other advisors doing, what are some of the best practices. We've had over the past 15 years communities in which advisors engage with each other. So it's really, really impactful for not just from an investment perspective, from a business perspective. I think it's very beneficial.
Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate your time and your insights today. If you'd like to get in touch with Lee, his contact information is here. You can always shoot me an email or chat a message in the chat function of this webinar to get in touch with them. And we hope that you learned something from this webinar, and we hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Apollo, for being our guest.
Thank you, Claire. Bye-bye.